Villains who lost it. Avatar. We've seen characters from Avatar lose their heads, and lose their heads.
You can't keep us here. Let us leave.
Let us leave?
But did you notice those characters that actually, well, lost their heads? In this video, I'll talk about 4 of them. Azula the Prodigy, Hama the Bloodbender, Zhao the Moon Slayer, and Kuvira the Great Uniter. We'll look at their slow and steady descent into madness, what happened to them after they lost their minds, and the lessons I think we can take from their downfall. One of my favorite things about Avatar is how they highlight the need to keep certain things sacred. You may not have noticed it, but the most important things in the show that needed protecting were nature and its perceived laws. And all the characters I'll talk about tried to pervert it in one way or another. Zhao's perversion is the clearest to see, I believe. Growing up in the Fire Nation, he had learned firebending from a White Lotus master, Zhang. But even Zhang had sensed a dark desire in Zhao, long before he became captain or commander or admiral. In fact, while training Aang, Zhang used Zhao as an example of someone who embraces the destructive properties of fire, saying that out of all the elements, it was the one that was alive, and without control, the power could consume. And that's basically the best insight we get into Zhao's character, because he let every single desire he had consume him. His fight with Aang, where he inadvertently destroyed his ships without Aang even having to fight back, is an example of this. And one more desire had already crept into his mind, consuming him even before then. And this was the desire to kill the moon spirit. Pretty weird bucket list if you ask me, but while he was a lieutenant, Zhao picked up this goal during his visit to Wan Shi Tong's library, where he sought out the weaknesses of the water tribe. He discovered Tui and La, the ocean and the moon spirits. Before leaving, he burned the section containing weaknesses of the Fire Nation in order to prevent enemies from discovering them. This act angered Wan Shi Tong, banning humans from perusing the library's knowledge, until Avatar Aang himself came around with his team to retrieve the knowledge Zhao thought he destroyed. Pretty smart guy, huh? Despite his clearly faulty ideas, he was set in his ways, and he was going to be the Moon Slayer. You can only imagine how powerful the Fire Nation was, such that the willpower of one young lieutenant almost wiped out an entire culture. One person that understood this firsthand was the legendary bloodbender Hama. When the show started, we didn't realize it, because we thought we were dealing with only the last airbender, until we realized we were also dealing with the last funny guy and the last waterbender of the Southern Water Tribe. Then we met Hama. She and the other Southern waterbenders had been captured when she was young and forced to live a long time in Fire Nation prisons and watch as some of her people died in the other wooden cells. Now that can make anyone go insane and do crazy things. And by God did Hama do crazy things. She learned how to bend the blood of tiny animals, and soon she bent herself out of prison. Not sure if there was no one else to help escape, but I don't think Hama really cared. She would spend a long time in the village she lived in, abducting people during the full moon and keeping them trapped in the mountains. By the time she met Katara, she had evolved into a person who saw waterbending as the ultimate thing in the world, even if it meant destroying nature itself. This was the right way to Hama, putting other creatures under her will. And Kuvira also did this with the people around her, from her fiancé to her subordinates to entire Earth Kingdom cities and towns. And she employed every method in the book. She mostly used coercive methods and turned forceful whenever things weren't going her way. She told communities that they could accept her help, but they would basically be signing over their right to rule themselves to her. If they refused, all she had to do was wait for the hunger and scarcity to get to them, while they saw the seemingly more prosperous regions under her command just beside them. In the case of Earth Nation cities like Zhao that could take care of themselves, she used force. She saw the necessity of them spreading their prosperity across the entire Earth Kingdom in the manner she would decide. In her personal relationships, she kept selling the dream of a greater Earth kingdom to people like Bolin. She sold solidarity to her troops when she was about to fight Korra, telling them she wouldn't order them to do what she wouldn't do herself. To lovesick puppies like Batar Jr., she sold them love. But to dissenters like Varric, she sold fear. This was her way. She was going to be the great uniter through an illusion of love or a reality of fear. And love and fear are things that Azula constantly misconstrued in her own relationships with people. She read her mom's feelings towards her as a feeling of fear. She forced her friend Ty Lee to give up on her circus dreams to join her pursuit of the Avatar, and tried to get May to stop Zuko and his friends from escaping the Boiling Rock prison. And this was how May responded.
The thing I don't understand is why? Why would you do it? You know the consequences.
I guess you just don't know people as well as you think you do. You miscalculated. I love Zuko more than I fear you.
Those words had a strong effect on Azula, and I'll explain in a minute. But you can see how her usually cool demeanor is changed into an angry one as soon as she hears the mention of the word love. Later on, speaking to a hallucination of her mom, Azula affirmed that she believed fear was the right way to influence people instead of love. In the beach episode on Ember Island, we can see that she didn't know the first thing about the delicate dance of romance among her peers.
You're pretty.
Together, you and I will be the strongest couple in the entire world. We will dominate the Earth!
All she cared about was domination and rule and fear. This was the right way for her. So earlier on, I said the most precious thing in the entire Avatar franchise was nature itself. The plants, wildlife, animals, the spirits, and even humans. Yeah, we're part of it all too, you know. Avatar is a great show because it draws some of its mythological, cultural, and religious depictions from real life. An example is the method the air nomads used for detecting the new Avatar. The children are presented with thousands of toys and are tasked with picking 4. 4 of these many toys are relics belonging to the Avatar in a past life, and a child selecting all 4 correctly is a strong indication that they might be the Avatar. This practice is the same method used in Tibetan Buddhism to identify the reincarnation of Tulku Lama. An extra point is that the airbending monks dress like the Tibetan monks. Now, all this is to say that with the Avatar franchise, some other things we find sacred in real life are also sacred in the show. With Zhao, he perverted balance using power. The Tui and La spirits swimming together represent the yin and yang from ancient Chinese philosophy about complementary forces that maintain balance. Zhao was willing to destroy the entire possibility of waterbenders, an essential phase of matter, and an essential culture that balanced the other 3. Hama perverted free will with power as well. She took several people using the power of the full moon and imprisoned them against their will. But she also committed another cardinal sin in the way she killed off plants without caring for them. Throughout the franchise, we see spirits attack villages for destroying or infringing on forests. We see this with Heibai in The Last Airbender, and we also see this with Korra's father when he went into and destroyed a forest known to be inhabited by spirits. This is why Azula's perversion of love through fear was also dangerous. She was the one who suggested to her father during the war meeting that they use Sozin's comet to destroy the Earth Kingdom once and for all. They were going to burn down several forests and trees, which spirits probably called home, like the Great Swamp. The same Great Swamp where Kuvira also perverted spiritual energy using power, creating an ultimate weapon that could blast away her enemies with a simple wave of her hand. The idea of spirits living in forests or trees is present in many cultures. In Japanese Shintoism, the Kodama are tree spirits that reside in special trees in ancient forests, and in some West African cultures, like the Igbos, designated evil forests harbor dark forces that prefer to be left alone. However, these villains in one way or another did interfere willfully. And what was the result? What this means is that in the toughest times, a person can be afflicted to do the most unreasonable things. For these people, in the presence of chaos, the most unreasonable decisions are usually what they go with. It happened to Zhao, it happened to Azula, it happened to Hama, and it happened to Kuvira. Azula's betrayal by her friends made her paranoid. Her style of dominating through fear seemed to be inferior compared to love. May was right. She didn't know people like she thought she did, and it made her not trust anyone. She thought a pit in her food was intentionally left there to kill her. She began questioning her royal guards and the Dai Li, and by the end of the day, she was without cover. All Katara and Zuko had to do was fly in and take the throne from her. Things got tough, and she lost it. Same thing with Zhao. Iroh warned that they had to withdraw their forces during the night, when the waterbenders were at their strongest. Instead, driven by his desire to be the conqueror and moon slayer, he forged forward, lost a lot of men, and destroyed the moon spirit, only for it to be revived by Yue. He was so deep in his pride that he wouldn't take Zuko's hand when he was about to drown. Kuvira almost killed the only person that actually loved her, and in a last-ditch attempt, went crazy with her spirit energy gun, blasting a new portal in the middle of Republic City. And Hama? Well, Hama had been crazy for a long time. In the heat of the moment with Katara, she was willing to kill the Avatar, the greatest hope of the people against the Fire Nation's tyranny, and the greatest hope for avenging the sufferings of her and her people, all just to teach Katara a lesson. These villains were hell-bent on doing things their way, and it didn't end well. In ancient Greek religion, it was said that the goddess Nemesis was tasked with extracting retribution for the gods, for people who succumbed to arrogance towards the gods, an act called hubris. We can glean, therefore, that one's nemesis was linked to their hubris, and in that context, pride literally comes before a fall. And the pride of these four characters to place themselves above certain sacred things was their downfall. Zhao ended up in a place of eternal torture. Kuvira fell from the top of the Earth Kingdom to a nobody. Hama went back into captivity, and Azula was going to be a disgraced princess, like she always thought Zuko would be. For these iconic villains who went insane, there's only one truth about their true enemies. It was their hubris. It was their own selves. If you enjoyed this video, let's keep going. Click one on the screen and we can binge through the Pangolo channel together.